Friends of BSc 5th SEM. Today I am in the chemistry lab. Now I want to tell you how exactly the gravimetric estimation of some substance is done in laboratory. So for that, let me introduce today what kind of equipments we are using for estimation of this gravimetric estimation of barium, iron or aluminium or lead. Now for this, let us go through certain points which are written on the board. The first thing is the process of isolation, weighing of an element or an ion in a compound, that too in a pure form, or transformation of an element or radical to be determined in the purest stable form is known as gravimetric analysis. Gravimetric analysis generally involves few steps, as already I have discussed in the previous class. That is precipitation, then preparation of solution, digestion, filtration, drying, weighing and calculation. The first one is preparation of solution of known amount of substance. For example, today I want to prepare barium chloride. So the known amount of molecular mass of barium chloride is dissolved in a proper proportion in 250 ml and prepare the barium chloride solution for preparation. Then the second one is precipitation. By adding a specific reagent to the barium chloride, it is subjected for precipitation. So once the PPT is ready, then subjected for digestion. So digestion can be done by heating, then it is subjected to filtration. So filtration is done by using a specific filter paper for the purpose. Then we have to use some washing materials to remove the unwanted impurities. Drying and ignition of the PPT. So this is also done very carefully, otherwise the results are not correct. And finally, weighing of ignited PPT is done and calculation. Now for instance, let me discuss about the barium chloride solution itself. So when you take a barium chloride solution prepared by a standard method, to this if you add a few drops of sulfuric acid, immediately you will get the barium sulfate as a PPT. Barium sulfate as a PPT. Here sulfuric acid acts as a precipitating agent and barium chloride is a solution, standard solution. So 1 gram mole of barium sulfate is equivalent to 1 gram mole of barium, or 233.42 grams of barium sulfate is equivalent to 137 gram mole of barium. That is nothing but 1 gram of barium sulfate is equivalent to 137 divided by 233, which comes to be 0.5887, 0.5587 gram of barium ion. Now, this is a conversion factor used for the calculation of how much amount of barium ions are present in a barium chloride solution of 250 ml. Okay, so this is a main experimental idea regarding this kind of experiment. Now here, for the recording, what you have to do is you have to note down the empty weight of the crucible as a W1, weight of the crucible plus residue as a W2, and the difference will give you the mass of the residue of barium sulfate. Then amount of barium present in 250 cc is equal to the conversion factor 0.5887 multiplied by, that is, weight of the residue. Then similarly in 250 cc multiply the factor by 10. So that will give you the idea regarding the how the amount of barium, how much amount of the amount of barium is present in 25 cc as well as in 250 cc. Now let us move to the experimental procedure. So here I have told this is what we call as 250 ml measuring flask, in which a known quantity of barium chloride is dissolved and diluted up to the 250 ml mark. So here is a 250 ml mark. So up to that. Now this solution is pipetted out. 25 cc of this solution is pipetted out by using the PPT, by using the 25 ml PPT and transferred into this beaker. So this beaker consisting of your 25 ml of barium chloride, right? So 25 ml of barium chloride, which is clear at this stage, is taken in the conical flask. Now to this, the precipitating agent, what I say, it is a dilute sulfuric acid. So this dilute sulfuric acid act as a precipitating agent. So when the precipitating agent is added, now let us see what happened to this. Slowly, okay. So the solution starts converting into a turbidity, white turbidity. So it will get converted into a white turbidity. So white turbidity is going to form, is subjected for heating by using the funnel here, burner. So here I don't want to do it because the heating requires minimum of 10 to 15 minutes. So that much time I don't want to take. So here I will give an idea that to the clear solution, when you add the precipitating agent like dilute sulfuric acid, few drops, so it will get converted into first a colloidal size particle of white PPT, white precipitate. Then when you subject it for ignition, that is heating, so the process of conversion of colloidal particles into crystalline particles requires heating. So this is what we call as a digestion. So cover this with watch glass and keep it for heating for next 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So when you do so, the entire residue, whatever the white pipette is there, it will become a crystalline form and the crystals will settle at the bottom. So that is a gravitational force acts on the precipitate and settle at the bottom. So this is the thing happening. So you will get a distinct layer that is called a mother layer, mother liquor layer upper part and the crystals at the bottom. Then now you have to use the filtration unit. So in this filtration unit, there is a filter paper 41 already I have placed here. So this filter paper 41 is ashless, weightless. When you heat it, it never produces any ash. And it is called Whatman filter paper number 41. The 41 is the mesh size of this filter paper. So when the filter paper is kept like this, just add few drops of water and make it wet, and finally you just go on filtration. So when you go on filtration using the policeman, so this is a things happening. Now here the after subject it for digestion, when you add to the filter paper, slowly it starts filtering. Water or some other unwanted liquid solution will come out from the bottom and the residue will be left here. The residue will be left inside the funnel. So this requires again 10 to 15 or minimum half an hour time to filter. Okay, so once filtration is over, what we have to do is whatever the final residue collected in the bottom of the filter paper, that is your barium sulfate which is present, is at the bottom. It is either washed with dilute sulfuric acid or ammonium nitrate depending upon the conditions or solubility of the particular reagent to be used for the washing. So here we have to use dilute sulfuric acid for washing. So we have to add few drops of sulfuric acid or few ml of sulfuric acid to this filter paper to remove the unwanted material. We want only barium sulfate is to be precipitated in the filter paper, no other material. So meanwhile, we have to make another arrangement that is called using hot air cone. This is called hot air cone. So it is an iron or steel material which is made up of a length of 6 inches. Now here what you have to do is, whatever the filtration we have done, so the filtration is completed and the residue will be there in the funnel. Now you slowly keep here like this. So before you keeping, you close the end of the funnel with either some filter paper or a cotton, okay, and then keep it for a little bit above the hot air cone. So again you start heating slowly. So when you heat slowly, what happens? The moisture which is present in the container, means in the filter paper, whatever the moisture, the water is there, that requires to be removed. So when you heat it for 5 minutes or maximum 6 minutes at the most, so the entire water will be removed off and your paper will become little bit dry. So it can be very easily lifted. Okay, so this can be done. So once if it is free from moving from the filter paper, now what next we have to do is we have to come to the other part. So this is what we call the electrical heating. Either you have to use the normal procedure for heating by burner or electric heating. Just to make a connection here and start this button, and this entire thing will become red hot. This entire thing will red hot. Then using the crucible, you have to keep it for heating. So what you have to do is you have to keep like this and just light the button. So there is a temperature range I am showing here. So the temperature range nearly it may be nearly 80 to 100. So you keep it for heating. So whereby the crucible, okay, this crucible is ready for heating purpose. So you have to keep for heating for about 20 to 30 minutes. So once it is done, then what you have to do is you have to remove it and keep. Then place it in this desiccator, to allow or come to room temperature, right? Then empty weight of the crucible is to be done. So here one thing we have to notice, that the empty weight of the crucible should be properly done. Otherwise the weighing may differ. If the weighing is differ, then you won't get the exact weight needed for your estimation of barium. Now meanwhile you have to open it, okay, then now remove it after taking the W1 empty weight. Now again keep it here. Then meanwhile, so the filter paper containing your residue of barium sulfate is now totally kept inside like this. Then you start the button and go for heating. So when you do it, the entire filter paper which is present in this electric burner in a crucible, it will start heating. So when it starts heating at high temperature around 100, 150 or 200 degrees centigrade, the entire filter paper, whatever you are observing, it will become vanish. So nothing will be left. So only the residue of barium sulfate will be at the bottom. So that barium sulfate which is present at the bottom is to be weighed again in this what we call this desiccator. So in the desiccator, you can see at the bottom there is a calcium anhydrous calcium chloride layer is there. Over that there is a tripartite triangle is there. Then whatever the heated material of your residue is there, just you keep here for cooling to room temperature. Once it cools to the room temperature, then you have to weigh it. So now let us see what is happening here. So the residue on strong heating, what happened? The entire residue will get to be converted into a white residue which is present at the bottom. Now this is taken again, kept in the desiccator and weighed, and confirmation after that the weight of the residue, whatever the W2 is there, you have to note down. So W2 minus W1, it will give you the amount of barium as a barium chloride to barium sulfate which are formed, that can be estimated and calculated by using the simplest formula. Thank you.
Hello, finally student, this is the third episode for gravimetric analysis. As already I have discussed with you regarding the precipitation PPT formation in gravimetric analysis. So you can see some solution to which if you add a precipitating agent, there is a formation of a PPT, and that PPT will going to form in a different conditions. So the conditions may be concentration of the precipitating agent or analyte, or in generally we can say the conditions like pH, concentration and various factors affecting the formation of PPT. Now, to form a precipitation, we have to follow 8 important rules. One is preparation of standard solution. Then second one is precipitation. Third one, digestion, filtration, washing, drying or ignition. Then weighing. Finally, go for the calculation. Okay. So let us move to the next. That is precipitation. So as already this slide is given in the last episode. So when we think of a formation of a precipitation, we require 2 factors. One is a standard solution. The standard solution may be, it is a solution of any material like barium, aluminum, iron or calcium, magnesium, etc. So a known amount of the substance is dissolved in a standard solution, is dissolved in a water to get a standard solution, either in the form of molar or in the form of what we say normal solution, normal or molar solution. Once it is prepared, then one has to add the precipitating agent, that is precipitating agent, the material which is to be added at this stage. So when the supersaturation stage occurs, where the quantity of precipitating agent is added little more so that it will become saturated with the standard solution, then there is a formation of a PPT which will begin, right? So here the 2 factors are important. One is Q. Q is the concentration of a precipitation before precipitation, and S is the surface area, so that is the solubility of a precipitating substance. So Q minus S divided by S, this is a factor generally describes how the precipitation can occur, how the precipitation occurs, and how it depends upon the formation of PPT during the precipitate. Now for this, we have to see whenever you will going to add a precipitating agent to the solution, standard solution, there is a 2 type of phenomenon happening. The one is colloidal particle formation, and second one is the crystalline particles formation. Colloidal particles have a particle size of 10 to the power minus 7 to 10 to the power minus 4 centimeters. Okay, and the crystalline particles are having 0.10, that is 0.10 mm or grams. So these crystalline particles are greater in size rather than the colloidal particles. But we have to remember one thing, that when you add the precipitating agent to the clear solution, when the precipitation begins, initially they are in a colloidal particle size of 10 to the power minus 7 to 10 to the power minus 4 centimeter. Then when the process of colloidal particles heating, that is called a digestion, begins, then after heating for several minutes, then they will get converted into particles of crystalline in nature. So crystals of 0.1 milligram are going to form. So this formation of the crystals depends upon one factor that is called as a relative supersaturation. Already I have discussed in the previous slide, that is Q minus S divided by S. So what is this Q? Q is, already I have highlighted, Q is concentration of solutes, and S is solubility equilibrium constant. Okay, if Q minus S divided by S, this factor, if you see carefully, then what happen? If Q minus S by S is large, then generally there is a formation of colloidal particles. If Q minus S by S is small, then there is a crystallization of particles begins. So like this, one has to define whether the colloidal particles are get converted into crystalline or not. And the crystalline formation depends upon the relative temperature of S. Relative temperature using dilute solutions and the precipitating agent. So these are the three factors depends upon the formation of colloidal particles. Similarly, nucleation may begin when the colloidal particles combine together to form a large, big size particles, that is called a nucleation process begins. Then particle growth Q minus S by S is a high, then it is increases. If Q minus S by S is a low, then particle growth size is decreasing. So these are the factors happening. Now for this reason we have to see one of the important factor, that is relation between particle size and supersaturation in precipitation process. Here the term called Van Weermann equation. So Van Weermann discovered that relation, already we have noted, that is called as relative supersaturation is equal to Q minus S divided by S. So in some time examination they may ask for 2 marks, write the Van Weermann equation for formation of a PPT and explain the term involved in it. So the term is Q minus S and S. So this relative supersaturation is one of the important factor given by Van Weermann to understand how the colloidal particles get converted into crystalline. Now, whenever we saw formation of a PPT, there are certain conditions come into force. That is conditions for analytical precipitation. Whenever the precipitating agent is added to the solution, so one should be very cautious that the formation of precipitate should be very accurate. That in terms, here we have to remember precipitation formation involves either in a hot condition of a solution or ionic conditions of the solution. Here the molecular solubility, that is solubility of the electrolyte which is to be added, of precipitation increases on increasing the temperature. So temperature plays a very important role to show how the precipitation occurs in an accurate way. And increase in the S decreases supersaturation, that is increase the rate of size of the formation of the particles. Then precipitation from dilute solution. The precipitation of ions of either, I have told you, calcium or barium or iron can be done in dilute condition rather than in the concentration condition. So the dilute solution is more preferably useful for the precipitation. Then conditions for analytical precipitation. Well, so when the precipitation is to be carried out, one has to remember that the pH of the solution must be in acidic, that is below 7, and that is a more preferable condition to have an ideal precipitation reaction. Then digestion of the precipitation. So when the digestion is to be carried out, acidic conditions with high temperature is preferable for the precipitation. Then impurities in precipitates. Well, generally whenever we carry out the addition of a precipitating agent to the solution, precipitation occurs, no doubt. So according to formation of the precipitation, if there is some impurity present in the electrolyte, that I say the precipitating agent, then co-precipitation occurs. Co-precipitation means the side reactions of the formation of other precipitates rather than the existing or a needed one. Therefore, one has to take the care that we have to avoid co-precipitation, that is a side reaction, side precipitate formation, by taking the purest sample in a good quality of water or in a good conditions, and the temperature increase and the pH and the entire process is to be carried out systematically, otherwise co-precipitations are formed and they are very dangerous for final weighing. Now when you move on to another aspect, the impurities in the precipitation, as already I have quoted, the surface adsorption of the colloidal particle may affect when there is a side reaction of impurities present in your solution or an electrolyte which is to be added for the precipitation. So in generally, the impurities of precipitations generally will go on absorbing more of the material during the precipitation. So we should take the care that there should not be any impurities. If impurities are there, they should be a very minimum and they can consider to be negligible as compared to the residue of our material. Oh my God. So right now, well, we move on to the impurities in the precipitation. So generally the precipitating agent or the standard solution we have prepared may contain some of the impurities, and these impurities are to be removed in a proper way, otherwise that will affect the final weighing of our main material. Now impurities in the precipitation, generally the word comes coagulation. We are mostly concentrating on the only one kind of a precipitation that will going to happen, but apart from that, due to the impurities, there is another layer which will get formed over the surface of the existing or the needed impurity, so that may cause coagulation, that is occultation. That means the precipitate is surrounded by impurity as another precipitate on the surface. Then post precipitation is also another factor which will affect the formation of our PPT. So the post precipitation, where the impurities present either in the precipitating agent, that is the electrolyte, or in the solution itself, we will going to form the side PPT before the original PPT starts. That is called the post precipitation. That is another impurity possibility during this process. Then impurities in precipitation, already I have shown. You can see the diagram, inclusion. So we are having a red color crystal and another is a little bit of brown color. So brown color, these are the crystals of what? The substance. But if the entire matter is covered with impurity, then that impurity is in the red colored, that is a solid formation. That it includes inside the precipitate, that is called inclusion. So this type may affect the entire formation of the final PPT. Therefore, one has to take the maximum care. Such things should not happen, and the removal of such impurity is very essential. Okay? So, peptidization. So, peptidization is a process in which a precipitate is already formed, which is in a crystalline form. But due to change in the temperature condition, the precipitate again get converted into colloidal form, and these colloidal particles again affect or surround the surface of your precipitate. That I mean to say that the colloidal particles again occupy the surface area of the original crystals. So that is nothing but peptidization. So peptidization is a process in which the colloidal particles of the same material, when they are formed after cooling, they will again coat over the surface of a precipitate. So that results into the formation of peptidization. So to avoid the peptidization and inclusion, the temperature of a little bit 80 to 100 degrees centigrade is essential to get a good yield rather than the formation of inclusion, peptidization, co-precipitation, etc., which are the very bad elements during the gravimetric estimation. Now let us move on to increasing the purity. So to increase the formation of the purity during the gravimetric estimation, there is one method called reprecipitation, that is re-PPT formation. So whatever the PPT form, sometime it may be get converted into colloidal form, or sometime it may be converted into some other form. So for this, what we have to do, we have to add the corresponding electrolyte so that the original precipitate will going to form and settle at the bottom. So this is possible only if the reprecipitation of the side product is done to get the original compound. Then to have the good yield, as already I have quoted, drying the solids. So generally the filtered material is dried at least 120 degrees centigrade. So that temperature is essential. Already I have noticed that if the temperature is more than 100, that is 120, then ultimately whatever the precipitate formation is there, that will be done in a good condition. Okay. Then now increasing the purity. So precipitation in the presence of electrolyte. Already I have told you the electrolyte is of good condition, so that the size of the crystals obtained in the final stage of the gravimetric estimation should not sink. So this is done just by adding the proper electrolyte to it and keeping the condition of conversion of colloidal particle into crystalline condition, and at the same time one has to see or one has to look into the fact that the digestion should be done at proper rate, that the temperature should be increased to 100 degrees centigrade, nearly 100 degrees centigrade, whereby only the crystals will settle at the bottom. There should not be any co-precipitation, there is no coagulation, or there is no side PPT formation. If this is done, then and then only all the desired crystals are formed in a good condition, and we will get the PPT crystals at the bottom and mother liquor at the upper side of the precipitate. Then application of gravimetric method. The gravimetric method has been developed for most of the inorganic anions or cations, as well as such neutral particles as water, sulfur dioxide, then carbon dioxide and iodine, etc. A variety of organic substances can also be easily determined gravimetrically. For example, the lactose present in the milk product, or salicylate in the drug preparation, and phenolphthalein in lactylates, and nicotine in pesticides, etc., as well as cholesterol in cereals, etc., can be estimated gravimetrically. The procedures are very simple. Friends, so before I end this topic, let me remind you, gravimetric estimation is one of the important tools to identify a minute particle present in a particular material by systematic way with 7 different steps, which already I have discussed. Now with this, I want to conclude my topic, and we will go for the another topic next time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.